Successful Networking. Prepared for and presented at the 2016 Square One Entrepreneurship Training Program. Square One is a program of the Center for Emerging Technologies. CET is an affiliate of the Cortex Innovation Community. Square One is funded in part by the Missouri Technology Corporation.
So, networking, gosh, it's a really big topic, right? We could spend hours and hours and probably 12 weeks on just networking. You guys have done a lot and learned a lot while you've been here. I imagine you've talked about, business planning and who's your customer and how do you price it and maybe where do you manufacture it and what do you have to think about next. So I kind of, as I thought on that and we have such a short time, I said, okay, how about we just say networking, now what? Like, what do I have to do right next with all the stuff that I'm thinking about from Square One? So that's kind of how I'm going to position this. You've done a lot, you've learned a lot, you're almost finished, you're getting the Square One loving cup. I'm not sure if there is one. What I don't want to have happen is you take all that great stuff and you find yourself in a room like this networking. Who knows? The person you need might be way down here, or he may be way up there. How do you even know if you're in the right place? How do you know if you're at the right event? How do you know how to find that person? So that is going to demotivate you really quickly after this 12 weeks. And so we want to talk about what can you do to be really targeted in your next couple of steps of networking. So in the effort of being as brief and concise as possible, I went with the good old who, what, when, where, why, and how framework. But before we even touch on that, I want to hear from you. We're going to start this with what you need. You can network your tail off, but if you're not focusing on what you need, it's going to be really fruitless. So on the first page of your handout, it looks like this, and there's a place to write down 3, as you can see, very short, very immediate needs. So maybe you had someone come in and talk about pricing, and you have no idea where to price your stuff. Learning about how to price is an immediate need for 2 weeks from now. So think about those things maybe over the past month or so or a couple of months that you know is a need. Be as specific as you can. Grow my company. We all need to grow our companies. Try to be more specific than that. What's a specific 3 needs that you have? And we're going to start with that in mind. So take a moment. The needs are coming out. Good. You should have 20. I'm only asking you for 3. You should have a lot. That's how we start. Can a couple people just shout out a need? Anyone? Sales. Audience.
Product feedback.
Product feedback. That's a fantastic need and really good for networking. Pardon? Prototype. I need a prototype.
Team members.
Oh, I need team members. Legal advice. Excellent one for networking.
Dedicated advisors.
Advisors. I don't want to build a team. Excellent. These are all fantastic, specific things to network for. We're going to get there. One more in the back.
I don't even know how to word this. When I go to networking events, I'm very shy, so I don't know how to.
You need the confidence to tell your story and ask questions. That's awesome. You're going to feel so much better in half an hour, I hope. So that's my goal. If we can all feel confident about at least what to do and what to say, that would be awesome. So going back to our framework, who, what, when, where, why, and how. Because we're going to move fast, because it's a rainy Monday, because I'm the middle person and I want to keep everybody awake, we're going to totally mix these up out of order. And I'm going to start with why. A very smart person said start with why. His name is Simon Sinek. Hopefully you've seen the TED Talk. If you haven't, look it up. It's a great place to start as an entrepreneur. We talked a little bit, S-I-N-E-K, TED Talk, Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. Got it. So we already talked a little bit about why you'd want to network. You have needs, right? You just wrote down 3 of them. This is the dictionary. Every speaker is supposed to start with a joke or a dictionary definition, right? So this is the dictionary definition of network. Sir, can you read that to the class?
Network is a verb. To interact with other people, to exchange information and develop contacts, especially to further one's career.
Okay. Hi, my name's Aimee. I'd like to further my career. How you doing? You want to talk to me, right? You want to spend a lot of time talking to me. Not at all. I don't really care for this dictionary definition. I like the front part. I like how there's other people and we're exchanging information. In the old days of the Rolodex, when you were just filling your names, that maybe was what networking was for. If you're in a sales position and you're working on leads, that still might be present there. Volume is important. But gosh, to further one's career, like who wants to talk to that guy, right? So I'm going to venture a new definition. Would you mind reading it for me?
Network, verb. To interact,
Still is a verb.
to interact with other people and exchange information in order to build a relationship that allows you to help connect each other with the resources you both need to be successful.
So do we like that definition a little bit better? Okay, it's more palatable. It's less, that other one is boring and kind of scary, and this one's better. So we're going to go from here, and the reason I like it is, we're talking about a relationship. We're talking about connecting. We all need to connect to find whatever we need, and we're talking about resources. It's not just about your career or your business. It's everything you might need, and it's kind of mutual success. So we're going to help each other. So I want you to keep that in mind as we think about networking. These are a couple of really basic networking goals. They're on the top of your sheet. Definitely when you're just starting out, especially when you're just starting out in a business, you're sharing information. You're saying, here's what I'm doing. I might not be a lot farther than that yet, but I can at least tell you what I'm up to. It's a great way to show your passion and your expertise. People invest in people, even if that investment is just their time talking to you at the networking event. So if you can show a lot of passion for what you're doing, I'm going to want to talk to you more. And if you can show your expertise in the area of business that you're developing, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, that's the girl to do that. I want to help her. It's a great way to build awareness, generate interest, connect with resources, whatever you need. Maybe you need a lawyer and you're out there networking for I want to find a really good IP lawyer. And that's my goal for this couple of weeks of networking. It's a great way to ask for feedback. Someone said they needed product feedback. This is a great way to ask for feedback. Just watching someone's face as you're describing what you're doing is great feedback. If they're nodding and leaning in, you're onto something. They're getting you. If they're leaning back and kind of scrunching their eyebrows and giving you a funny face, either they don't understand what you're doing or they're not understanding the way you're telling them about it. So those are all just really easy and good indicators and a great way to use your networking time. And then of course, gaining, whether it be clients or supporters or investors or whoever you need, an advisory board maybe to come alongside you in your business. So on the top of your sheet, we're gonna really quickly write your networking goal. Don't think about too long term. Think about right after you leave square one. What is your networking goal? And you're going to write it in that scroll. And since it's in a scroll, it's permanent and official. Take out your quill pen. This something can change. Maybe you get a little bit down the path and you realize it needs to be slightly different, or you find success quickly with that goal and you want to move on to the next one. But it's important to have something in mind so you know where to be and what to look for, or else you're just a wandering networker. And those wandering networkers aren't good. So now we're going to move on from the why to the who. There's another side of that equation, that networking definition, right? You're not just talking to yourself in the mirror, although that's not a bad idea, practicing networking, especially if you're nervous. If you're thinking about what you're saying or you want to make sure you're getting your message across. I've recorded myself before, video, audio. I've practiced, to my 8-year-old friend, and if he can understand what I'm talking about, I'm pretty good. Practice in the mirror. But there's someone on the other side of that networking conversation, right? So who are these people? There's a couple of them, and I want you to think for a moment about how you build out your network. These are things we think about naturally. I think once I detail them, you'll go, oh yeah, of course. But we sometimes don't think of them formally, and it can be helpful to think of them formally. So there's a couple of different people you'll be networking with. One are what I call your first degree contacts. So these are people that you already know. Maybe they're in a group you belong to. Guess what? You're all now each other's first degree contacts, prepared to get the phone calls. Anyone that is right in your direct contact. So your parents, your friends, your neighbor, your coworker, everybody in this room, people that are in your contact list. You could handshake and ask that person for something rather easily. So I hope you're thinking of a couple of first contacts. And you'll see there on the middle of that page, there's a place for you to write down, and you can do it as I'm talking if you wish, some first contacts. So think about it with your networking goal in mind. Like your dog walker maybe isn't an important first contact to write down unless they have something to do with your business. If you're producing a leash that you want to test, that's an important first contact. But try to think of your first contacts in the way of the business networking and goals that you want to accomplish. So you'll have first contacts, then you'll have second degree contacts. I picked this picture because she looked so nice and like ready to introduce you to someone. So that's exactly what a second degree contact is. It's once removed. So maybe you've heard your colleague at work talk about the fact that her partner is involved in blah, 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 and that has to do with your business. So that's a contact you might want to talk to once removed. Rather than your parents or your friends, maybe it's your parents' friends or your friends' parents. It's someone you can reach with an introduction. Does that make sense? What a second degree contact is? Okay. A second degree contact might also come up if you're networking and talking to someone and you're describing their business. And you say, I need a lawyer. I'm going to pick on you now, sir, because it's so like, there's straight line to lawyer. And maybe you say, I really need help finding an IP lawyer. And this networking person that you're talking with says, I don't know anyone. I didn't use one. Can't imagine an entrepreneur that didn't use a lawyer. Everybody get one, and an accountant too. But I can introduce you to a friend of mine who helps small business owners find lawyers. So that then becomes a second degree contact. That person will need to make an introduction for you, but you're once removed, and then boom, they're in your network. So with your business goal in mind, jot down a couple of second degree contacts that you might have in mind. Even if you don't know their name, if you're thinking like, oh, my neighbor's friend that she's mentioned to me, write that down so you don't forget. This might become your list of like, who do I contact right away next week? And then after first degree and second degree, we have what I call an aspirational or a third degree contact. So these are people that you don't know and you don't have an immediate connection to, but you know it would be really good for you to network with or get to know or learn from. Does anybody have any aspirational contacts in mind for their business that they'd like to share? Yes?
Major retailers.
Major retailers, okay. And I would like make a list of like who those are and what priority they belong in. So be as specific as you can. So we want to meet some major retailers, or maybe even more specific, someone that's in charge of buying or procurement at a major retailer. Anyone else? Aspiration? Yes, ma'am.
The store manager at Whole Foods.
Store manager at Whole Foods. That's a good aspirational contact. And in the back?
Oprah.
Oprah. I love it. Why not? Like, write it down. I always say Brene Brown because I'm such a fan, and a lot of the writing and speaking and stuff I do has a lot to do with like what she talks about. So I don't know if I'll ever get to have coffee with Brene Brown, but she would be on my aspirational contact list. So again, these don't have to be actual names of people. Like, say you're trying to get a school initiative passed, or you have a technology that you're wanting to implement and put in the public schools. You'd probably love to meet the superintendent or maybe the mayor. So don't be afraid to write those down. I think sometimes people feel silly. Silly either because it's too much of a stretch and they're like, who am I to ever meet Brene Brown, blah. Or silly because they maybe feel like, gosh, if I'm really doing what I say I'm doing, I should already know them. And so they feel kind of embarrassed. Don't let that stop you. Write it down. Speaking it into the world helps. I always tell this story when I get to this point, but I was doing this with like high schoolers that were doing mentoring, and they were thinking about what fields they wanted to be in, and so all this was really, really new to them. And one of the kiddos wanted to be a video game designer, and he said, I was watching the news with my mom, and they covered this one guy that was here local in St. Louis, and he was building video games, and he had this whole company. It was so cool. I'd love to meet him. And so we went on like pizza break, and they came back, and while they were on pizza break, I happened to know that guy because he's a friend of a friend, and I've worked in entrepreneurship for a while. So I'm like, hey, Sam, I got a kid that really wants to meet you. And he's like, yay, give him my number. So we sit back down, and I'm like, hey, Jamal, I'm so glad you told me that because I just talked to Sam on the phone, and he really wants to sit down with you and talk to you about video gaming. And he was like, but it was such a cool example of like, speak it into the world, and who knows, maybe someone in the room knows Oprah, and you just spoke it, and it shall be. But don't hesitate to write it down. So I think most people were writing as I was talking, which is fine. Feel free to keep filling that in. It's good to have kind of a catalog of the people you know and the people that you need to meet. It'll help you target your networking. I want to say a little bit about aspirational contacts. We've already established it doesn't have to be a person's name, and you guys did a good job of saying I want to meet the store manager at Whole Foods rather than I know her name is Susie. It's helpful sometimes to think about these 3 areas. So maybe you're in an industry that you need to meet more people in that industry. So it might just be, I need to meet some folks that are in, selling handicrafts from other countries. So maybe it's just that kind of realm that you need to meet more people in and learn more about that. Maybe it's a position that you need to be exposed to. So a procurement person at a retail store, or I was once working with someone that had software for school social workers, but she had never been a school social worker and she really didn't know what that all entailed. So I'm like, guess what? You need to find school social workers all over the darn place and like meet with them and see what they're doing. So her position was just, I need to meet school social workers. And maybe it is a person. Maybe you actually know that person's name and you want to jot that down. So that's kind of a different way that you can think about who you want to meet, because hopefully you'll get far along on your first and seconds, and you can simultaneously kind of work on your thirds. Sometimes third connections or aspirational connections are like the big bet. So you don't want to spend all your time there. I probably don't want to spend every waking hour trying to get a coffee with Brene Brown. I might end up with a restraining order against me. And it would probably not be a great use of my time, right? I should be doing other things. But not a bad idea to like keep my antenna up for that. So here's a little bit about how you can think of those aspirational contacts. And you can continue to jot those down as you go. So I combined when and where, because the question that I usually get is, great, I've got my pitch. I know the kind of people I want to talk to. How do I know where to be? And this is a tough one, especially if you're newer to the community or newer to the startup scene or a new entrepreneur. We're not in New York or Silicon Valley, but there's a lot going on in St. Louis. I kind of say if you don't think there's much going on, you're not paying attention, because you can go eat free like 4 or 5 different places every night, would you say, Mark? There's a lot of places to go be. So there's a lot of places to go be. How do you decide? A lot of us are managing other things, full-time jobs, families, community involvement, other stuff aside from our entrepreneurial endeavors, and our time is really limited. So I want to talk a little bit about how you can decide where to take your targeting and your pitch to go talk to people, so you don't end up in that massive room of all the people that you can't find. So when and where? A lot of places. You might recognize some of these. There's a list on your sheet, so you don't need to mad scramble. This is by no means even touches the surface. You can go be part of a startup weekend and figure out how to put together a business. That's a weekend deal that you build a business from scratch, and you've got some kind of form by Sunday. If you haven't been to Venture Cafe yet, you should go there first. Thursday night, good networking. I-10, if you're a tech entrepreneur and you need some mentoring, I'll plug Prosper Women Entrepreneurs. If you're a woman and an entrepreneur, you want to go to some of those events. If you're out in St. Charles, OPO startups, old post office startups, they have a lot going on out there. There's just about, 1 million cups. You can go be a part of a global hack and learn about coding if you're working on something technology related. Did anybody go to anything for Global Entrepreneurship Week 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago? I think some faces were there. Yay. That's a big thing full of 1,500 entrepreneurs and entrepreneur supporters. So there's no shortage of places to be. And this is the equation. When I look at this and I get overwhelmed because I'm not even sure what any of these things are, I put them through this filter. So I look at an event and I ask myself these 2 questions. Is there content there that I need to learn? Maybe it's someplace I've never heard of before. I'm not quite sure what it's all about, but they're going to do a panel discussion on how to find a lawyer. So I'm going to go because I need to know that. Or conversely, maybe I'm not too keen on the topic. Like I either am not that interested or I know it already, or it doesn't have to do with what I'm doing, but I know that the people there are people I need to meet. So the connections there will be good, and the atmosphere will be good as far as who's playing in that sandbox. So is it something you need to learn or know about? Are there people there that you want to meet? Those are kind of the 2 filters. Of course, if it comes together and it's both of those things, awesome. Keep going there for as long as it's interesting. But don't be hesitant to go to something that you're not sure of just because it's a good topic, or go to something that's not really up your alley, but you know the people there are going to be people that you want to meet. So that's kind of what I filter through. If it's not some of that, maybe try it once, but don't waste a lot of time at some place that's not serving you. Even if your entrepreneur friends say it's awesome, or it's like the cool place to be and everybody's there, or even if they have a really good buffet and free drinks, go like once. But don't waste your time at places where you're just being busy. Go to places that you can really target both what you're learning and the people that you're meeting. And there's a couple of ways you can like sleuth this out. So I'm gonna take, a lot of people say, Aimee, that's great, how do you know that? And my answer is always use your Google. My answer to a lot of entrepreneurs is use your Google, because there's a lot on Google. Here's an example. This is just Venture Cafe's website. You can find, if you've never heard of Venture Cafe before, you can go to their website. It's vencafstl.org, every Thursday night. Good stuff, good people. But you can find out a lot about it just from the website. You can click the About button and say, what do they say they're about? What kind of people are here? This is probably your best bet. You can go to their calendar. So at this particular organization, they have a lot of activities that happen every week. So you can go and look at what's coming up. And even if you're a little bit of a nervous networker and you don't like relish the idea of walking into a room full of 100 and 200, 300, 400, 500 people, go and be like, oh, I want to learn about that thing at 5:30. So I'm just going to go. I'm going to sit in the room at 5:30. I'm going to learn something. I'm going to see how I feel. Maybe I'll wander. So calendar is a really good thing to check out. Most websites have photos of people. So if you didn't know anything about Venture Cafe, you could say, oh, that guy's there, he's talking with his hands, it looks like he's having fun, maybe I'll go. So you can usually see kind of like who's going to this thing, what does it look like, who's there? You can read their blog, here's what happened last week, here's some people we met last week. A lot of people are blogging about their events, so that's a good way to kind of sleuth some stuff out. You can follow them on social media, see what they're talking about, figure out if it's a place where you think you should be. So if you did this exercise for 4 or 5 places, you'd already be decently busy with trying out events and trying out your networking. So that's the where and the when. Now comes the what. And this is largely what you want to talk about. So a lot of people also say, Aimee, great, I know what I need, I know where I want to be, I walk in, what the heck do I say when I meet someone, right? That can sometimes be the scariest part and the most important part, because you need to like make your case and do your pitch. So we're going to talk a little bit about pitching. You guys probably had a little bit of a putting together your pitch here. You've probably worked on that over the last time in Square One. So the one thing I'll focus on as far as a good pitch in networking is making it modular. So you never know who you're going to meet. You never know right away even who you're talking to. But if you have all your pieces together and you figure out, oh, the person I'm talking to is likely a customer, I'm going to kind of pull out the extra, here's the benefit of our product, little box, pitch box, and I'm going to put away some of this other stuff that they don't care about. So I'm going to make my pitch modular. I'm going to tell them what they need to know once I've found out a little bit more about them. Or likewise, maybe you're talking and you find out that the person you're talking to is a service provider. They're an accountant, they're a lawyer. You're not going to tell them all your business. You're going to say, here's why I really think I need a lawyer, or here's what I'm struggling with accounting. What would you suggest? So you're moving around your pitch to make it interesting and beneficial. You never walk up to someone at a networking event and say, hi, I'm Aimee, nice to meet you. Hold on a second, I'm going to give you my pitch, right? Like that doesn't happen. But you have all the cards that you can play. And I think just being comfortable with all of these separate cards lets you have a conversation. The goal is only to mention a couple things and then get to coffee or get to follow up or get to a meeting anyway. But the more comfortable you are practicing in the mirror or recording yourself or to your dog with your pitch, the better you'll be able to have that conversation. So that's the what of what you say when you're networking. I have on this sheet, the same one that's got the same side that's got the content and connections. When I'm talking to people about pitching, I use this middle section as my 3 things pitch. So here are 3 things, 3 things, 3 things. 3 things I want to say about my business, like very short. That's why there's not a lot of room. 1, 2, 3. Here are 3 things that really differentiate my business. Really quick. 1, 2, 3. Cheaper, luxury, more efficient, makes you feel better, whatever those are, really quick. And 3 things that you need. 1, 2, 3. So if you're kind of wondering and going, oh, what am I really going to say? you've got like a homing beacon right here. I at least need to touch on some of these 9 things because they're most important to me. So sometimes it helps to write that down and just be really focused. And you can stick this in your glove box and be like, what do I want to say? So the how, I'm just going to have a couple of like tips and tricks that we'll go through here. And then we can chat more in depth about anything you want to chat about in detail. This is kind of, you're not supposed to have so many bullets on one page, but this is some stuff I want to make sure we get in, and a lot of it's on your sheet as well, so you don't need to write it down. General tips about networking. Definitely have a goal. If you're able to learn a little bit about where you're going or who you're talking to, have a goal for that networking hour or that networking meeting if you're sitting down to coffee. It keeps you from being the wandering networker. So you can say, I'm going to go to Venture Cafe. I think they're doing something on raising money, and I at least want to learn one new avenue that I haven't thought about for raising money, and that's my goal. And as soon as I do it, I can go home and sit on my couch. Or as soon as I do it, I can stay longer, but I know my night will have been a success. So kind of have something in your mind to keep you from walking in and being like, what? Why am I here? I don't know, and now it's uncomfortable, and I'm just going to leave. Know your story. That's your pitch. Know what you want to say about your business and what you want to ask people for. Make your pitch modular. We talked about that. I always like to give people context for why I'm somewhere. So if I walk into a women entrepreneur meetup and I meet someone, I'll say, I've never been here before, but I heard it was a really great place for women entrepreneurs to connect, so I thought I'd try it out. That might seem obvious, but it gives people like a foundation of why you're there. It helps them anchor you to the space, which makes them mentally more comfortable with you. And they can also say, oh, I remember when it was my first time, they did this thing on blah, 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 blah. Or I've been coming for 1.5 years, I just love it, here's why. You'll get some more information. So give people context when you meet them for why you're there. Be ready to ask them questions. I've got a list of some good networking questions that we can touch on at the end. If you're at a loss for like what to ask, have a couple that are always in your back pocket. I mean, do you come here often? Isn't even that bad of a one. Don't say it like that, but it's my first time. Have you been coming for a while? What's it like? Or what are you here to see tonight? Or what's your biggest challenge with your business right now? I find that I'm just drowning. I'm just starting out. What have you overcome lately? Just have some that are easy to get the conversation going. And to that end, if you are talking to somebody and your pitch goes out of your head, you can't remember anything else, try to be your genuine self. And even if you're using some of your questions that you have memorized, try not to sound like a robot. That's more easy for some people than it is for others. But authenticity really is above everything else. People respond to people who are genuine. People don't respond to people who feel like they're being worked by, or that's working the room or walking around handing out cards. So be your true self, even if you forget everything else, and that's gonna make you be okay. I added a couple of bullets for if you happen to be sitting down with someone, like you've gotten to the coffee meeting or the email exchange or the phone call. A couple of things that you want to keep in mind when you're networking in that very specific, have more time face-to-face way. Research your contact. If someone said, yeah, I'd love to get coffee with you and tell you what I know, to be very blunt, usually in networking situations, there's a power up and a power down position. If you're asking someone for something, they're in the power up position, you're in the power down position. So go where it's easy for them. You set the agenda to the meeting. You offer to pay for coffee, they probably won't let you. But you be ready to talk to them where they are. So research them a little bit. Know what their position is. Know what their skills are. If they've recently published an article that shows up on the first page of Google, be ready to mention that. I was looking a little bit into what you had done, and I saw that article. It was fabulous. I was really curious about blah, 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 blah. I mean, that doesn't take a lot of time, and how impressive is that? Don't say your kids looked really cute in their Halloween costumes. I noticed you have a vacation home in. I mean, not stalker territory. You can find that just as easy. But keep it on the professional. Keep it on the up and up. Don't be a stalker. But research them a little bit. It shows that you care and that you're serious. Be early, obviously. Be professional. Be interesting. Be interested. That's where the questions come in. Have some things ready to ask them about. When I do talk to high schoolers, I have to spend a little bit of time on the difference between confidence and arrogance. I probably don't have to spend that much time in here, I don't think, but There is a difference. And as someone who's networked towards a lot, there's nothing more annoying to the person you're sitting across from than someone who's doing the real arrogant, because why am I sitting down with you? You obviously don't need me, you know it all, and you know everyone. So I'm wasting my hour. It happens more than you'd think. I'm gonna just say it really bluntly because you don't wanna fall into that trap. Be confident about your business, but be humble and be grateful. People always ask me about name dropping, especially in St. Louis. One or two names of context. You know, if I tell you I work for Prosper Women Entrepreneurs and you say, oh, I used to do this thing with your founder and she was great. That sets context, that brings us together. But if every 30 seconds you're dropping another name, I'm like, why am I here? You don't need me. So be careful. That is kind of a fine line and it can be really off-putting to someone. Show that you're grateful, obviously, be gracious, and follow up. We'll talk a little bit about how to follow up. People always ask me, can I just send an email or do I need to send a handwritten something? Just make sure you send something. Email is fine. Email is fast. It's right. You can send it right from the car afterwards. Mention something you appreciated from the conversation. Add a little bit of depth there. Send a card if if it was a really great meeting or with a really great person. If you got Maxine Clark from Build-A-Bear to have you at her office and talk about product manufacturing, send an email and then send a nice card. I was at the Washington University for a while in their entrepreneurship center, and I'd get a lot of cards and I'd like tack them up on my board. I saw them every day. And when I left there, I took them all down and they're in my closet at home like years later. It lands. So you don't always have to, but it's a nice touch if it's something that's really important. It's a great idea to follow up with conversation, an article you saw, something you saw in the news that it was pertinent. That's a really easy way to follow up, especially if it's been a little while and you're like, oh, I should have followed up sooner and I really didn't do a great job of keeping up with that. I'm gonna go find an article and be like, oh, I just read this and it reminded me of our conversation. I hope you're well. We've been doing a little bit of slightly separate topic, but not even so much. A lot of job interviewing lately, and we've been a little slow on our end, to be honest. And so, it's awful to be waiting for that answer after a job interview. And I've had a couple of really, really smart follow-ups and it was just, I saw this article, it made me think of what we were talking about, would love to talk to you more, or hey, any news, but it made it really unobtrusive and it made me want to read something and grateful for the follow-up. So that's a good way to do it, updating people on your progress. A lot of people ask me about keeping track, and there's a lot of systems that let you do that. I've done it in Excel when I remember. And I had someone, I think this is a tough thing because it can get really overwhelming, but I had someone tell me once, have your top 10. So the top 10 people that you're working with, that are helping you, that you need to follow up with, and that top 10 can move all the time. Someone can fall off, someone new can come on, but it gives you kind of a target of, I need to at least be kind of chatting with these people every once in a while. Yeah.
Can I circle back to the articles and news thing
Yeah.
for a second? So as somebody who's very much traditionally been in the power down position,
Yes.
power up position, I'm usually the one sending the articles, not receiving them.
Yes.
And what I want to avoid is I want to avoid coming across as contrived.
Yes.
And so obviously I only want something that's relevant or interesting to them or pertinent to the discussion or whatever. But what can you do to make sure it doesn't come across as false or I don't know, political or something?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, because you don't want to, remember we were talking about authenticity, and you don't want it to seem icky. I mean, and the more people network, I think the more they have that, I have a really good BS radar, I like to think. And so that gets honed, and you find yourself really responding to the people who just seem really decent and genuine, you want to help them more and you want to talk with them more. So I guess a couple things I'll say. Don't stretch it. Make sure it is something pertinent. And gosh, there's so much content out there. You can find something recent and pertinent for just about anything. Another thing I'd say is help them make that connection. So let them know what it was about that article or video, or I saw this speaker that made it interesting and made it pertinent to them. So a lot of times, I do this with my team all the time because we're always sending There's so much on entrepreneurship, and we're always sending, oh, saw this, it was cool, saw this, it was cool. This made me think of our conversation and this decision we're trying to make. Sometimes I'll pull out like and you use the Clippy tool on your computer, you can just pull out a paragraph and be like, saw this paragraph really resonated with me, it made me think blah, 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 here's the rest of the article. So you can kind of help them make that connection. And if you really can't find anything, send something else. Let them know, maybe a progress report. You know, you really helped me think about my marketing strategy. And you know, over the past couple of months, I've worked on that, and I've done some customer research, and here's something I've come to. Thanks so much for setting me on that path. I mean, you can kind of make stuff like that happen. Yes?
As a person who does a fair amount of networking consulting,
Yeah.
you'd be surprised how many articles get forwarded that the person didn't read. So when you
Good point.
put the piece out and bring it to their attention, it does two things. One, it lets you know that you really digested it in their context. And two, maybe they're not going to read it either,
Probably
but they'll
not.
at least read that paragraph. And for God's sakes, at least read the article before you
Seriously.
forward it.
What if it says something bad about their company or something good about their competitor, or like, yeah, you never know, especially in a town like St. Louis. I mean, it could be like, oh, your brother-in-law was indicted on blah, 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 blah. I didn't read that far, but like, here's the top part that I thought was cool. Yeah.
Another thing I was going to bring up is I've been able to do that with sending a contact, sending one of those tier 2 referrals over to someone that maybe I just met this person in passing, I had their card, but this person asked for that specific, and I can go, oh, here, let me send you a card, I'll call him real quick, and the guy may or may not remember me, but I've
You've
made
added
connection,
something.
so it at least it maybe reopens a door
Yeah.
to both of them.
And you've made it interesting, and you've added some context there, which I think is my last bullet point there is return the favor. Like, introduce them to people or help them with something. I mean, it's even though we talk about these power up, power down, and it for sure is, there's still, everybody needs help, everybody needs resources, everybody needs information that they might have missed otherwise. So it's a good way to do that too, to kind of keep that networking cycle going. Yes?
So bad at networking, really.
No, you're not. You're great.
For example, at Venture Cafe, I go all the time.
Good.
And I go home afterwards, and I've talked to like the people I know in this class, but no strangers.
Oh, it's hard to talk to strangers. It really is.
My mom taught me well, but too well.
Yes, her mom taught her too well. I'll make a couple of recommendations. So you said that you will often talk to people in this class at Venture Cafe. I bet that the people in this class know people at Venture Cafe that you don't. So ask them to introduce you to someone. And if you're being a gracious networker, people, for everyone to hear, you're doing that anyway. If you notice that someone's a little timid or it's their first time, they're not sure how to navigate, you're helping them. That's a good networker. Hey, want you to meet my friend. He's here all the time. Another thing you can do is if you go for a session, like if you go in the Havana room and you're doing a big class or a round table, you have a shared experience with a stranger in that room. So talk to them as you're leaving about what they thought of it, or wasn't that interesting, or have you been to things like this before? You don't have to walk up to someone out of the blue, totally that you don't know, and be like, hey, what's up? Like talk to get in the bar line and talk to somebody at the bar. Everybody's talking at the bar. Suggestion?
Yeah, so 2 tricks I use, and
Tricks.
they seem to work out pretty well, is if somebody's not talking to anyone, I go seek them out, because most people like being spoken to, and most people are uncomfortable approaching someone else. So generally they appreciate you taking the burden of breaking the ice away from them, just by going up with them in the first place. So that's number 1. And then number 2, it's like really easy, like it says their name and there's like a number next to it, and that tells me the number of times they've been there. If it's their first time, then you can say, oh, it's really great, do you know about the sessions, blah, 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 blah. And then they'll remember you as the person that made their stay better. And the 3rd or 4th time they're there, they might even still remember you, and so it sort of like feeds on itself. And then finally, my sort of go-to question is, hey, Michael, so what's your story? And the reason why I say that is, and I try to say it cheerfully, is they can tell me as little or as much as they want. And if they don't say much, then it sort of lets me know that I should move on, and I'll waste time with my pitch. And moreover, it allows me to like tailor it towards the
Feel them out,
modularity.
yeah.
Right? If they're talking about accounting stuff, then I can just sort of leave that in. So
Those are really good suggestions. I love looking for the other lost soul on the perimeter. because they'll be your best friend, because they were feeling awkward too. And I kind of joked about the bar line, but a great time to catch wanderers is to and from the buffet, to and from, so you strike up a conversation and then you're kind of talking as you go. All those suggestions were awesome. Was there another one in the back that I missed? Yes.
Well, I just wanted to celebrate something that Aimee said. So, remember the definition that she gave, the old-fashioned one, and then the new-fashioned one, the big difference was relationship. Relationship is give and take. Let's face it, most of networking for people that are starting out is going to be about taking. But I can tell you from experience that people that kind of get on my radar screen in a really positive way are people that offer something back. And this idea of putting yourself in that person's shoes and saying, gosh, I could introduce that person to this other interesting person that they don't know, that's really powerful. Or, I was getting ready for a panel one time, and a person that was just in the periphery of my network said, hey, I see you're going to be talking at such and such a panel, and since you're from the pharmaceutical industry and it's a device panel, I thought you might be interested in the following points that might be interesting that came right out of an article. Let me tell you something, that person just leapt in my estimation because they were thinking about, my problem.
Yeah.
And it just made me think, wow, what a helpful, smart person this is.
Yeah, you remember that kind of
I'll
stuff.
never forget it.
Yeah. Yeah, Mark.
The one thing that, if you're going to do introductions, make introductions, make sure you absolutely know what a well-qualified introduction is for the other individual.
Yeah.
There's some power introducers whose introductions have caused me to have to pull them aside and make sure that they're crystal clear on what a really good introduction for us is. We work really well with people that already have a product or have industry experience. We work less well with people that are looking for jobs or people that are thinking about maybe someday starting a business. And I've had to make sure that people understand what a good introduction is for us, right down to what the revenue levels are and what the types of manufacturing are. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, then the disservice you're doing yourself, let's say you go, let's say we'll give you 2 weeks vacation, so it's 50 weeks a year. And it takes you 10 minutes every single time to extricate yourself from one of these conversations. 10 minutes times 50, you spend a day of your life just getting out of conversations that are really, really bad intros, and that's every single year.
Well, and
so
guess
make
what?
sure if you're introducing people, you know what a valued introduction is for them, because if you don't, that one's going to bite you.
Yeah, and guess what? It goes to your personal capital too. Like if I'm consistently making crappy introductions, guess what people start to think about me? She doesn't really know what she's doing. And she's supposed to be this networking expert. She really sucks at it. So be careful of that. And I think when Mark started talking, I was thinking about these email introductions that we touched on over here. And I, in the back of my head, said, whoa, that could be another hour conversation, so I let it go by, but maybe we should go back. So both in person, I'd like you to meet, even though that's probably more casual and you can extricate yourself from that. But email introductions, if you're always sending me really bad email introductions, you haven't asked me. There's some people that really like to be asked before they get an email introduction. Some people are less worried about that, but make sure you're doing good, qualified introductions. If you keep sending me job searchers, I'd love to help most people. I don't have time. That's not what I do. Or you keep sending me male entrepreneurs. Again, love them, want to help them. I like guys, but we work with women entrepreneurs. So know what a qualified introduction is and a quality introduction is. Don't become this networker who's just shooting off, hey, Aimee, meet Christy. Hey, Aimee, meet Mark. Hey, Aimee, meet, you're going to drive me crazy and you're going to go way down on my list and I might even not answer you anymore. So that's good. I think I am about done and I may even have a couple minutes for questions.
You do have a couple minutes. We have about 5.
That never happens. Got to ask me some now. This is I've never been in this situation before. Yes, please.
For the aspirational contacts, one of the things that I read is using LinkedIn, the advanced search for finding a common thread with maybe some of the aspirational contacts that you have.
Yeah.
That you don't have any direct contacts and sending an introduction yourself. Highlighting the shared point and asking to meet or asking or whatever it is.
Yeah, so the question was using LinkedIn for those aspirational contacts to like find the common places. It's better if you can find a more concrete connection, I think. Whether it's, I think this is a major theme of whether it's online or off. And we've got lots of great tools. But whether it's online or off, the more concrete a connection you can make, like if you can find a person in between you to help make the connection, or if you can't find a person, maybe you're part of the same, you're alumni from the same college and you were in the same show choir in college, that's maybe an even more personal connection, or else you're kind of like throwing spaghetti and hoping it sticks. And something like LinkedIn is not gonna reflect on you as poorly as if you were like wandering around to actual people, but it could just be a big waste of your time. So with all connections, I think the more concrete you can make it, a person is the best bet, or we have this really specific thing in common, it's just gonna save you time and make you more effective, in my opinion and experience. Yes, ma'am?
LinkedIn also has interest groups.
Yep.
So that if you're in an interest group with somebody, and these are sometimes, like there's a water group that I'm interested in. So I joined that group and all of a sudden that opened up a lot of contacts and I had no idea.
Totally. And if there's only 20 people in that interest group, you might have a really good chance to connect with someone. If there's 2,000 people in that interest group, it might be hard.
Before you, like, can you look somebody up, figure out what their interest groups are, and just join their interest groups?
I think you can. Mark's got a good point. Authentic, genuine networking. We'll go back to that theme. Mark's got something.
LinkedIn stuff though, because the risk to you is essentially zero. I mean, if you don't hear back, you don't hear back. But if you do hear back, it could be huge upside. 2 examples. There was a professor from Oxford. I got no connections, okay? I got nothing. But I read his book, and it was an interesting book, and I had a question about a specific section in there, and so I fired off an email on LinkedIn, and I'm like, A, I'm going to get nothing. B, if I get anything, it'll be the graduate student to the graduate student to the graduate student. All B, if this guy doesn't respond in person. So you never know.
That's nice.
Another example, I sent an email to a guy and said, XYZ school, alumni, blah, 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 in the announcement. And then in the email, I said, complete bullshit. That's not what it's about. Here's what it's about. We did both go to the same school. He wrote an article in our company in Inc. magazine. He was
Nice.
a journalist.
So what are 2 things, well, maybe 1.5 things that Mark did really well? Strong subject line, even though the second one was a fib. Strong subject line, lots of content. I read your article on XYZ. I was really interested in this piece, would like to talk to you about, right? So those are, if you're gonna do it that way. Those are awesome examples.
This is a good point. When you've written an 1,100-page book and you're citing page 797, reasonable certainty that you at least still get.
He might take you seriously, yeah. Yes.
And one thing that I've always been kind of a serial networker in all type of thing, everything I do, but one type of style that I try to adopt was to reach out to other entrepreneurs that were further in their process than me. And I was really surprised, like, I don't know if you've heard of this website called The Grommet, but people who have these kind of startup inventions. I suggest going to the website. I contacted a couple people that had inventions because I was interested in their manufacturing process.
Nice.
Just went to their website, clicked on the About Us or Contact Us, and the founder or the inventor of that product would actually email me back, and I've been able to start up good conversations like that. So
That's great.
Just kind of getting, I think, creative too in your search process kind of helps too. Like you said, Mark, people will be very willing to talk to you, I find.
And I think this is a good example. I always coach entrepreneurs to not feel like they need to be limited by their industry. Some people think, well, I need to get advice from other people in my industry. And there are some specific cases where that might be true, but business is largely business. So I need to move my accounting from Excel to a better system. Any entrepreneur that's a couple of steps ahead of you can help you with that. One of the things we do for Prosper Women Entrepreneurs is peer groups. And this one woman was adamant that she wanted to be in a peer group with other yoga studios. And I said, no, you need to be in a peer group with everybody but another yoga studio, because you know how to do the yoga part. You don't know how to do the business part. And anybody doing any kind of business can help you with that. So don't feel like you're limited to your industry or your specific area, this is a great recommendation to find any entrepreneur that's a couple of steps ahead of you and ask how did they test their product and get feedback? How did they find their first lawyer? How did they get more confident at networking their stuff? Yes.
Hey.
Hi.
So if this isn't something that you're really, really, really good at, it sounds like it's something that we all need to be at, but can you supplement by having a staff member who's really good at it?
Yes. I think we all need to be decently good at it, because you might be in the supermarket and a good networking opportunity might come along. It happens everywhere. Your neighbor is saying, hey, what's up lately? And you are networking. Or gosh, holiday parties coming around this time of year, really good networking opportunities. Go into those holiday parties with some questions and some ideas of what you want to learn. But we often say that sometimes the best thing a founder can do is have someone else telling their story for them. If it's not your skill set and it really is someone else's, just make sure that person has as much of the passion as they can muster, because that's one thing that is sometimes hard to replicate from the founder, is just that, like, why I got off my duff and did this thing. But if it's someone else's skill set and it's not yours, send them around. Yeah, or maybe send them and then follow them to learn a little bit, or yeah, get more confident. One more question, maybe?
One more question.
Yes.
This is about Prosper.
Oh, okay.
So I know a lot about your organization, but one of the things I wanted to know, I know you have the different programs and the peer groups, but do you have like get-togethers where you're not a part of a program because maybe the person's schedule is way too, but they can come and still like fellowship with other
Yes.
Prosper women? And I never get the emails. Like I don't know if I get spammed or.
Yes, I'll do a little plug for my last little bit. So you can sign up for the newsletter at prosperstl.com. So if you have signed up there and you're not getting it, check your spam, because maybe it's going somewhere bad. The internet netherworld. And yes, our peer groups, Casey's a member, and we're so glad to have her. Those come around twice a year, applications due for that. And that's kind of a flagship program. But in addition to that, there are other gatherings that we just bring people together. And we're actually launching a whole new suite of programs in January. So get on the mailing list and we'll be shouting about those, just for people that are curious about entrepreneurship but maybe not ready to make the big leap into a more consistent kind of commitment. So yes, lots of ways to get involved. Thank you. Thanks, you guys.